Welcome to 50 Shades of Tennis, unraveling the court's secrets and strategies. Well, Adam, thanks for taking the time out of your schedule to chat with us a little bit. I know tennis is an important aspect of the club, and we have many members that are playing. But I want to get into the more details. I know the racket's an important part, but as part of the racket, it's the stringing. So maybe you can kind of give us a little bit of advice on the strings, what's important, techniques, and so on.
Yeah,
Go for it.
absolutely. So the string plays a very important role in our equipment and our overall game. And there's four main types of string that I would like to cover for everybody today. So the first one that we're going to go over is natural gut. So natural gut, it is cow intestine that's woven together to create the string. Now, natural gut is going to give you the most power and the most feel in the racket. By that, I mean it's very friendly on your arm. So it's a very soft feeling string that you have in the arm there. The downsides of natural gut is it is going to be your most expensive string that you have, and the durability of it is not as high as the other strings that we're going to cover.
So just a question on the natural gut. What happens if I have moisture?
Yeah, if it's a little bit humid outside or you're playing in light rain, that's really tough on the strings and it can cause the strings to break prematurely. So natural gut is a very sensitive string. Even if you leave it in your car on a hot day, say, you leave it in there for a little bit too long, that can cause the strings to break prematurely. So you want to try and keep the strings around room temperature as much as you can whenever you're not playing with them. But it's a very, very good string, really high performing string. However, like I mentioned before, it is a little bit more expensive and the durability on it is not as high as the others, but very arm friendly. So if you're somebody who has a lot of arm problems or tennis elbow, very good idea to try stringing with natural gut and see how that affects your play and if that can take a little pressure off of your arm there. After natural gut, we're going to talk about synthetic gut. So synthetic is, like the name would suggest, was made to mimic natural gut. It's going to be at a much more friendly price point, and it's a very good all-around string. It's made out of nylon fibers, so it's nylon fibers kind of woven together there, and it's good all around. It has good control, it has good power. However, it's not going to be to the same level of natural gut is. So it's like a toned down version of natural gut. It's going to be more durable, and it's going to be much more price friendly. So if you're a beginner who's just getting into the game, I would highly recommend starting with some type of synthetic gut because it's a pretty strong all-around string and it's going to give you a lot of qualities that'll help your overall game style there with synthetic gut. After synthetic gut, we have something called multi-filament string. So multi-filament string, it's very similar to synthetic gut, but it's a bunch of little strands, kind of bundles of string all woven together very tightly. Now this is going to be your softest string. So the softest string that we have is multi-filament. So again, if you're somebody who's had wrist problems or tennis elbow in the past, very, very good string to use there as it's really soft on our arm. Now this string is going to provide you with a lot of power, but not quite as much control. And the durability of it is going to be a little bit less than that of synthetic gut. So these strings will break a little bit more frequently, especially if you're a big hitter or somebody who spins the ball quite a bit. The lifespan of these strings is going to be a lot less than that compared to a synthetic gut there. Then moving on from synthetic gut, we have polyester. So that's kind of the fourth main string is polyester or poly strings as they're very commonly referred to. Now these strings are going to be the stiffest strings that we have. So they're not arm friendly compared to the other strings. So they're meant for durability and spin. So if you're somebody who generates your own pace very nicely and you're just looking for a string that's not going to break very often and one that you can really spin the ball with better, I'd highly recommend polyester strings. They're the most commonly played string on the professional tour is the poly string, because when we have a lot of pace on our shot, we need to generate a little bit extra spin to help keep the ball in. Now I recommend poly string for experienced players, people that are really smooth with their swing and are able to catch the ball out in front a lot. If we're late on a lot of shots, that's what can cause tennis elbow. So especially with a stiffer string, we want to make sure that our technique is in a good enough place that I can catch that ball out in front all the time and really get the full benefits of the polyester string there. So just to recap those four before we move on is we have natural gut, which is going to be your softest string. It has the most power, really good all-around string, but the price point's a little high and the durability is a little low on those strings as well. We have synthetic gut, which is like a toned down version of natural gut. So very solid all-around string at a more budget-friendly price point. And then we have multi-filament, again, very, very soft string, good for power, but the durability is not as high. And then we have polyester, which is going to be your most durable string. It's going to provide you with the most spin and will help give you control if you're somebody who really does a good job of generating your own pace there.
Now don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to get notified when new podcasts come out. So Adam, I have a question. If I'm going to be going into competition and I really want to have an aggressive game, what do you recommend in terms of the string I should be using?
Yeah, if you're somebody who plays really aggressively and you're taking a lot of balls with a lot of pace, I'd recommend polyester strings.
Okay.
Because if you're playing aggressive, you're going to have some pretty good swing speed, so you're going to need a little bit more spin to help pull that ball down into the court. Now, we talked about how polyester is a little bit harder on the arm. One way we can set up the strings to really help us is with what they call a hybrid setup. So that's going to be putting polyester in the mains, so your vertical strings, and then something a little bit softer in the crosses, in the horizontal strings. So most common setup that you'll see is people will go polyester in the mains and then some type of multi-filament in the crosses, just to give you a little bit of buffer. So that way we get that soft feel, a little bit of extra pop from the crosses, but we're still using the mains mainly to create the spin. So that's where we want that polyester string in there.
So when we're stringing the racket, do we adjust the tension differently depending upon what the player wants, or is it a function of the string itself?
So tension is a very important role. The higher tension I have, so the tighter that I string it, the more control that I'm going to have and the more durability I'm going to have on my strings.
Okay.
So the tighter, the more control, the more durability. The looser I string the racket, the more power we get, but the less control we get. When it's looser, it creates like a trampoline effect, so the ball will pocket on the strings, and that's where we generate a lot of that pace from.
Okay. Now I'm in a doubles match and I'm playing. Is there any special recommendation you have for the racket or the strings that I'm going to use?
Yeah, singles versus doubles, I wouldn't change your tension or your setup there.
Okay.
Much more individual to how we swing the racket, what speed we're playing at, and how much spin we can create.
Great.
You know, hitting on a ball machine, your setup there versus playing in a match should be the same setup. We want to keep that as consistent as we can.
Okay.
Once you find a setup that you're comfortable with, I would stick with that as long as we can, as long as it's not giving us any arm problems and we're getting the performance that we're looking for.
Okay, great. Well, I do appreciate once again you taking the time, and I'm sure the tennis community will enjoy this podcast. Thanks again.
Of course. Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Okay. Now, don't forget to send me those questions. That makes this podcast go. So remember, send them to this email address right up here. Thanks again for your help. Now don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell to get notified when new podcasts come out. Thanks for listening.